bestie. Are you ready for another episode of the Empower and Evolve podcast? Today, you are going to hear a beautiful interview with someone special. Her name is Carley Ann. I met her through one of the memberships that I'm a part of, and I was on her podcast a little while ago, and now I wanted to get her on this podcast because she has a really important message to share, and that is how to move from anxious attachment towards secure attachment. Carley Ann is a certified CBT and somatic attachment therapist and a trainee psychotherapist. She shares her personal triumph over anxious attachment to inspire and guide women towards becoming secure. Specializing in attachment, Carley Ann believes everyone has secure attachment within. It's a case of uncovering and rediscovering this inherent version of yourself. She teaches people to self-soothe, develop self-esteem, and reshape their nervous system from insecure to secure so that they can have the healthy, happy relationship everyone deserves. Carley Ann is the proud founder of the Attachment Recovery Gym. She has crafted an online membership to assist individuals on their attachment healing path, providing invaluable education, practical tools, and a supportive community network. I'll have all these links in the show notes for you so you can find her Instagram, her personal Instagram. You can find the Attachment Recovery Gym Instagram, and you can check out her podcast and also check out the Attachment Recovery Gym because there's so much valuable information in there. And in this podcast, we really talked about insecure attachments. And for me personally, if I was to use the words that Carley uses, I have the tendency towards avoidant attachment, and I am way more secure now. Like, it still comes up for me sometimes to be in that style of attachment and be avoidant because of my upbringing, etc. And yet I have fostered the tools that help me be more secure now. And in this podcast episode, both of us, predominantly Carley Ann though, share about our own journeys. And Carley Ann talks about her journey in her 20s of being in the anxious avoidant trap and what that looked like, and what kind of started her on this journey of really embracing becoming more secure in her relationships. And I know you're going to get so much value from this episode. So without further ado, let's dive in. Welcome to another episode of the Empower and Evolve podcast. Today I'm here with Carley Ann, and we're going to talk about a super juicy topic of going from anxious attachment to secure attachment. It's going to be so great. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. It's my favorite topic.
Oh, I know. Carley and I have been connected for a little while, and this is all she talks about on her social media. And I've learned a lot from you, just like watching your content. And I actually can relate a lot to this topic, even though if I reflect back on my attachment styles and like my journey towards secure attachment, it was more from the avoidant. But I have a lot of friends around me who are still working through their anxious attachment. And even my partner, my husband, I would say is a little bit more towards the anxious attachment style, which I think is very common to have the anxious and avoidant when we first come together, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like we all have like a variety of attachment styles. I think it can depend on your partner's mood sometimes, which
Yeah.
style into, I think we can get a little bit set on, right? I'm anxious or I'm avoidant or I'm this, but we're a little bit of everything.
Yeah, people love labels. I've really like learned that through my time. It's like, I am this and I am that, and this is the little box that I put myself in.
Absolutely. We definitely lean more to one primary attachment style, especially under stress and when we're in a relationship. But it's difficult to be someone that's so interested in attachment styles,
Yeah.
but agree with you on that point about labels.
Well, but that's the thing. Like, I still use labels, like I have all these different things, all the little boxes that I like to put myself in. And I think it's helpful to have these boxes and to have these labels. And at the same time, recognize that we are fluid to move in and out of the box and go into different boxes, etc.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100. Yeah.
Anyway, we're jumping like the gun as it happens. So let's wind it back a little bit. Carly, tell us about you. Who are you? What's your story? How did you find this work? And let's just start there.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm Carley Ann. Really, I found myself working primarily supporting people with exactly like you say, that feel insecure when it comes to dating, relationships, and it it's primarily, I have to say, it's probably how I've got here is based on my own personal experience. That said, so I always say, like, I've got over 3 decades of personal experience with this and decades of, like, professional experience, because there is a difference, right? I haven't experienced every single scenario. There is a difference in the people that between me and the people that I work with. But there is something about it when you have had certain experiences in your life, that when you can come face to face with people and there is that similarity between you. And I don't know how it is that I actually ended up helping people that have similar stories, similar behaviors, similar thinking patterns. I just know that it's who I attracted.
Mhm.
It's what I loved to talk about, and it all just really came together. So in terms of me, if I think way, way back, I grew up in very chaotic, unpredictable circumstances. There wasn't a lot of connection, there wasn't a lot of safety. The insecurity, anxious and avoidant, to be honest, was like inevitable in this situation. And I just didn't know. Did I know? I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. But what I look back on now is, see, this is someone who went into work in mental health, went to uni, studied psychology, worked in mental health, worked in substance misuse, did that really typical thing of people who have been wounded, and worked in helping other people.
Yeah. I
Very good at it as well.
I find
Yeah.
it's the best healers, if we use the term healer as like a broad spectrum, coaches, therapists, energy workers, massage therapists, like anyone who helps people heal. I find that a lot of us have found our way here because of our personal journey. And
Yeah.
that's what makes us really good at our work,
Yeah.
because we can relate. Because
Absolutely.
yeah, because if we think back to like people who may not have these kind of experiences, like it would be curious like what would lead them towards that work, because I find that it often comes from our own healing and like realizing like, wow, I can change. That means others can change. I want to help facilitate that change.
Yeah, I think as long as change has happened,
Yeah.
because the difficulty as well, right, is, and you see this, there is research, there is debate around people that have anxious attachment, whether they are the right person to be helping people that also have insecure attachment, or insecure and working with insecure, because of our tendency to have insecure relationships. And so that
Interesting.
can go towards your clients and the people that you work with, and form. So if you haven't done that inner work,
Yeah.
or this is why I do find the professional part of it really important as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't start doing the attachment side of things until I'd done like a lot of the work. If I'd started doing this in the attachment side of things in my 20s, I was in the thick of my anxious attachment in my
Right.
20s. So I don't know that that would have been helpful,
Yeah.
to be honest. And I'm only really going from what some of the research says. I can only
Yeah.
predict that now. But my 20s were completely chaotic in terms of dating and relationships and my relationship with myself. It was, if I was dating, it was chasing, it was crushing, it was unrequited love, it was rock bottoms, it was repetitive in that way. If I was in relationship, I was people pleasing. There was a lot of separation anxiety, a lot of jealousy, these kind of natural reactions that you see in anxious attachment. And it was really, really in the thick of it until I had a breakup at the end of my 20s. It just cracked me wide open and opened my eyes and led me on that journey.
During your
Yeah, I'd already started the healing. I've already started the self-discovery in terms of I was so interested in happiness and well-being. So
Mm,
that had already given me a bit of a head start for sure.
yeah,
But not so much the specific interrelationships had I done.
absolutely. No, that makes perfect sense. And have you ever heard of the something called the Saturn return?
Yeah.
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 Was that during your Saturn return?
I was 29 because the Saturn return is at 27.
It's actually the time from 27 to 33.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. So it
There you go.
shows up differently for different people.
Yeah. It was
Mm,
perfect. Like, I mean, that is crazy to say that now because at the time, I remember just wanting to see like I would just, if someone had let me see like 1 second into the future during the crisis part of this breakup. And I remember desperately thinking, I wish I could just see 1 second into the future to know that I'm okay. And so now that I'm like, it was perfect. Like, thank God it happened, all of these things. It's so lovely to hear myself say that and think of that
yeah.
part.
That just shows the growth, right? When we're able to look back at those rock bottoms and be like, thank God. Like it was
Yeah.
exactly what I needed, exactly at that time to lead me to where I am now.
But when you're in it, oh my God, it's so hard, isn't it? Like it's
Yeah.
so, and if you add, I have to say, if you it's painful for anyone to go through a breakup. If you add anxious attachment to that, it is just it's your whole world is shattered. Everything's shattered, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. So, for the listeners who don't know secure, anxious, avoidant attachment and what that even is, could you shed a little bit light on that?
Yeah, I will say I do talk primarily about anxious attachment. So it's not that there is no dismissing avoidant attachment. People that lean towards avoidant are just as important in terms of being a human, being flawed and the difficulties that they go through. There is no, in my eyes, there's no villain. I feel like
Hmm.
that's really important to say. But
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, if we think of our attachment style, we're really thinking about with attachment theory, it's particularly looking at how our earlier attachments influence how we form bonds and connections as children, as adults. I'm more focused, of course, on adult relationships. And your attachment style essentially says how secure you feel in relationship with another person. You know, you have insecure and we have secure. And you've already said it, right? Insecure, the avoidant, the anxious, the disorganized, which is basically a mix of both.
Hmm.
The insecure attachment, we haven't had the best start when it comes to love, haven't had the best examples of love, of connection, of relationships. Those experiences probably haven't had enough of like enough repair,
Right.
didn't experience enough predictability, enough coming back after the ruptures. I think that's the key thing. So, as adults, relating to other people, trusting other people, expecting that relationships can be positive or that they last, that's really difficult. And if anything, your threat state has been fully primed. And so, as an adult, you're on the lookout for when I'm going to be let down, left, abandoned, how this is going to go wrong, who's going to hurt me. The anxious will be exactly how it sounds, very wanting to get close to people, needing that acceptance from someone else, needing that person to soothe them, to make them feel better. Just attempts to feel okay
Yeah.
by getting that from someone else, and it's really painful, and they struggle to regulate their emotions. They struggle to feel big emotions. They get preoccupied. Soon as they're in relationship with someone else, they come out of relationship with themselves. And so you hear all the time, right? People who um, sort of see themselves as having an anxious attachment. They talk a lot about, when I'm single, I'm great and I'm fine. I mean, I call it like the happy single bubble. Then I meet someone and I completely lose myself. And it's that inability to be in relationship with someone else and stay in relationship with yourself, because they become the world.
Wow, I've never thought about it that way or heard it explained that way, but that makes so much sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And avoiding it. And the reason I like to think about insecure, secure is
Uh-huh.
because the underlying difficulties with avoidant, there's still a lot of stress, there's still a lot of upset. It's just that it appears very different.
Yeah.
And it can appear like they're not bothered. It can appear like they don't care, but that's not the case.
Yeah.
They still struggle with regulating themselves. There's still that deep trust issue and having that negative outlook on relationships. It's just they will tend to keep things at arm's length, keep
Hmm.
things away, that excessive self-reliance, because I can't rely on other people.
Hmm.
So it's still coming from that same place. It's just there's a lot more has been suppressed, I guess.
Hmm. Do you think there's and this is maybe beyond, but it's just a curiosity that came up. Do you think there's something that like makes you either lean towards one or the other as a child? Like, because it's both stems from the same place of lacking of the
Yeah.
security and the reliance. Do you think there's something like that would make someone lean more towards one or the
Yeah.
other?
I would say like there are definitely cases as well where people are just like, I don't know how that applies to me, because I experienced a happy childhood, or things were secure enough. And so I do feel like it's worth saying that sometimes it doesn't have to be this like big,
Hmm.
obvious trauma, right?
Hmm.
Sometimes it is that um, parents were working and they weren't around.
Yeah.
There can be so many things that don't mean you had this one significant event that you remember. But yeah, I would say, like, if we are thinking about anxious attachment, typically speaking, caregivers may have been quite anxious. They
Hmm.
might have spilt their uncertainties, their worries, their
Hmm.
anxieties around onto you as a
Hmm.
child. So there can be that high anxiety in them. It can be that love was quite unpredictable. So this is what it was really like for me. Like love, it was very unpredictable. Sometimes your caregiver is there and then they're not there. And that might be physically, that might be emotionally, but they tend to be, it's just that, is it here or is it not? And
Yeah.
so, of course, that becomes quite anxious, and parting ways can feel like, is this person going to come back?
Mm,
Like you just don't know what to expect. But it tends to be like very like a high anxiety, unpredictable, chaotic, those kind of things,
yeah.
Perhaps with avoidant, you're looking at someone where maybe there was still a lot of like contact seeking with the caregiver, but there was probably repeated rejection. You hear with, a lot of my clients with avoidant attachment, they'll talk a lot about spending a lot of time on their own.
Yeah.
They might have been left alone a lot,
Uh-huh.
or can be that there's so many controlling,
Uh-huh.
rigid behavior by the caregiver. And so now it makes sense, right, that I'm gonna come over here and I'm not going to put myself out there, because every time I did when I was younger, there was rejection or it wasn't there anyway. So why am I going to keep trying?
Yeah. Yeah, I can definitely relate to that if I was to bring that back to my childhood. And I feel also like another thing to note here is when we talk about childhood and these kind of things, like it's not to blame our parents or anything, that everyone's always doing the best they can with what they have. It's
Mhm.
more as a child, you do not have that logical, rational thinking of like, oh, this is why this is happening. It's more everything is taken extremely personally. And for me, like my dad left before I was born. My mom had to go and work away on cruise ships, being away at months at a time. I was brought up by my grandma, who is very kind of, I was basically born in the Soviet Union, so very strict, very rigid, like that kind of like toughness. So from that explanation, it makes perfect sense why I then leaned towards that. And even growing up, like I was always super like, oh, able to do things on my own. And people were like, oh, Kat's okay. She can be alone. She's got this figured out. But it was exactly this holding back, this suppressing, and just making it seem like I'm okay. Like, just, yeah, it's so fascinating how all of that really impacts us for our
Yeah.
life.
And especially when we're almost can be like rewarded, right, for being okay, for being
Yeah.
that strong, for being resilient and getting through it. And you hear that a lot. People will describe themselves that other people see them as the strong one.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the time, this was in my experience, I, so many of my friends, it's become like an ongoing joke, to be honest, about how little they knew and probably still know a bit about my childhood.
Mm-hmm.
Because for me, it was partly this was the deal, this is what was encouraged, and partly probably from shame and embarrassment and all of
Yeah.
those things. But outside of the home, it was a case of going to school and saying everything's fine and pretending that we fit in and everything's good, we're fine. And if people ask, everything's fine. And the amount of times I would lie out of, like I say, just protection of the people that you love, for being told to lie about the reality. And so that comes with you. You put
Yeah.
on this front and we protect the people that we love,
Yeah.
and we learn how to be confident, succeed, do well. So many people that I work with have got or look like they've got their shit together and they're doing really well. They've got great friends, great job. When it comes to romantic relationships, some friendships as well, it it's really, really, really difficult to manage.
Mm. Yeah.
I
That's
think
so.
that's why it can be so strange, and that's why you can feel so crazy, because
Uh-huh.
where does this suddenly come from? There's this trigger, and suddenly I'm a different person,
Yeah.
acting so out of character and out
Uh-huh.
of control that we feel crazy, and then get told we're crazy
Yeah.
because jealousy's wrong. And obviously, some of the behaviors are quite, a lot of the uh, anxious behaviors, they are quite controlling.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have our best interests at heart. Well, they probably do, but they're not within our best interest as adults. Um, that we again will feel or look crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In your work, have you come across, because you said you predominantly work with people who have anxious attachment. When you work with them, do you find that, because when I remember when I started learning about attachment theory, the whole like anxious people then kind of clam onto avoidant people, and it's just, meant to fail basically, because the avoidant avoids them, which makes the anxious more anxious, and it's just this like, so do
Yeah.
you find that that is often the combo that happens for people, or?
Yeah. Yeah. So much. I work with a lot of people either that are in relationship with
Mhm.
someone who's actually quite secure,
Oh, great.
and they're now at this point of being like, I'm going to lose this, or I don't know what to do because I've made this great progress that I've got here, but I still have these patterns. And then, as you say, the anxious avoidant trap will be the other most common person that I work with. So that's the person who is attracted to, obsessed with, can't stop thinking about the avoidant person, the unavailable person. convinced that this is love, convinced that this is the person. Unless you might be, sometimes they're coming out of that. Sometimes they're saying to me, okay, I can see it now. Help me to break this
Mm-hmm.
addiction to this person. That's sometimes there as well. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's very real. And that was my 20s.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and you really believe that it's love until I've been in this relationship that I'm in now. Was it I had made a bit of a move more towards secure people, but mostly they were still avoidant because it only takes that one person, remember, and I really believe that now. Um, and I can see the progress through the people that I dated and how quick I walked away and those kind of things. But it is very real that when you're attracted to someone that's avoidant, that again, they become your world. You give up on yourself, you neglect yourself, abandon yourself, ignore the red flags, all of those things.
So tell us a little bit about your journey of going from, all these terrible experiences in your 20s to starting to lean more towards finding a secure partner. Like what was some of the things that happened in between, and like what were you working on yourself, and how did you maybe catch yourself when you were in that kind of anxious behavior of latching onto someone and making them your whole world?
Yeah. Like I say, there was some pre-work that I guess was a little bit accidental because of the work that I do, working in mental health, helping people to change, well-being, that kind of thing. I had access to all of these tools, all of these materials, plus just a complete natural interest in positive psychology.
Mm-hmm.
So I had already done an awful lot on starting to understand what makes me happy and what doesn't, starting to be able to observe the kind of thoughts that I'm having and the impulses that I have. So I'd really started to recognize myself as a person because I was in relationship. A lot of it was covered up when I started doing this work. I was in a relationship, so I didn't get to see, apart from the separation anxiety that definitely existed, so when we were apart or sudden changes in plans, worrying about his safety, who he's with, is he going to meet someone else, those kind of things, that was there, but we lived together, so a lot of it covered up. And then the breakup happened and it all just, I could see it all again. And I would say what's really key, and a lot of the work I do with people now, is those foundations of what makes you happy, what lights you up, what doesn't make you happy. So because I'd already done that, I feel like I had a little bit of a head start. So when we broke up, for example, I remember knowing, really strong knowing, if you stay in bed, you're going to feel worse. If you get up and go to the park, you're going to feel better. So those kind of little
Yeah.
skills I developed already.
Yeah.
Doing what I didn't necessarily feel like doing, I
Yeah.
developed. But then I started, eventually, when I got through the crisis part, started dating again.
Uh-huh.
And there was this guy I dated. He was the first one I met out of this relationship. And everything from my early 20s just came back huge. Like when he started pulling away, I became like just so fixated on this person, completely lost myself. He's all I could think about, constantly checking my phone, constantly wanting to reach out. Then I would reach out, find excuses, thinking about it, just all of it. And because of my early 20s, where again, that was a pattern, I was like, this is like this, something's not right here. And so I just went on I'd already aware of attachment and things like that, and just started reading loads of books, becoming more and more aware of attachment. And I was like, this is me. And I could remember the first time I read about attachment in like my A levels. So like over 10 years ago at this point, and just being like, oh my God, how did I not see it? If only I had seen it when I read it and actually seen it.
Uh-huh. You weren't
Saved.
ready for it then.
wasn't ready, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't ready. The time was not then.
Yeah.
But yeah, because and I could remember that. And then it just started. But listen, got over him. Then there was the next avoidant. Then there was the next one. So there was still this pattern of falling into um, the same behaviors, the same kind of anxious avoidant traps. And then slowly that started to change.
Mm.
Slowly, I was able to tolerate more the feeling of them not liking me. I started to see things for what they actually were, recognize the red flags. And I mean, there's a lot of things that I did that I'm happy to talk through to
Yeah.
really,
Share it with us. This is fascinating. I love hearing
yeah.
this.
Obviously, I guess the difficulty is it wasn't in like one particular order, right? And I always think it's really key with this that it is such a puzzle
Mhm.
when it comes to healing your attachment. But if I had to give, I guess, a bit of a mindset that I think was really, really important is that I decided and I was absolutely determined that we all deserve healthy love in our lifetime. And just because we haven't seen that or experienced it doesn't mean that you can't. I don't know if I believed it at that point, but I was determined to see if it was possible. And that's kind of what I thought is whether I believe it or not, I'm
Yeah.
really determined to find out if this is
Yeah.
possible. And so, kind of, the commitment I made with myself is that I'll just never give up trying, no matter how many unavailable guys, no matter how many times my heart gets broken, no matter how many times I'm on the bathroom floor. When the time's right, we'll get up and we'll go again.
Mm.
So I feel like that was a mindset that was really, really important.
Yeah.
And that's the believing in what you can't see,
Yeah.
right?
That's so crucial in healing. That's so crucial in healing is having that unwavering faith that it's going to be okay in the long run. Like you can, achieve your goals, that there is something better out there, that this is
Mhm.
just something you're going through right now, that it doesn't determine your whole future. Like that is just so key.
Yeah. And again, I think that comes from, so people are like, oh, but I'm not there. That probably comes from that earlier stuff that I'd done on the mindset, happiness, love, like spirituality,
Mhm.
love the manifesting, all of that. So I've already kind of got that idea of, okay, we've got to believe in what we can't yet see. So
Yeah.
that was already kind of there.
Yeah.
That wasn't there in my early 20s at
Yes.
all. It's a whole different story in my early 20s. We were not here. Yeah, so there was that, and I feel like that's really important.
Uh,
And then there was, I guess, if I had to name it in terms of how I teach it now, it's emotion regulation. So, what I just will point out as well, you'll notice with some of these, there was that phase of looking at what are red flags, what's
yeah.
avoidant attachment. There was
Yeah.
that phase of like really deep diving into that. But luckily, I soon realized that that was just keeping alive trying to understand the other person. That was keeping alive, will they come back? Um, I don't know. There was something about that for me, it was like it was keeping the old patterns alive. So what actually I believe worked was what is secure attachment? What does healthy, secure attachment look like? And going down that road, creating that life instead.
Mm, I love
Emotion.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Actually reminds me like one of the concepts I teach because I do a lot of work with the unconscious mind with my coaching clients.
Mhm.
And what we focus on is, or what some of the things I teach is focus on what you want rather than what you don't want. Because your
Mhm.
unconscious mind can't always process negative. So even though you may like, I want to avoid anxious at the avoidant attachment, I want to like make sure I don't fall into that trap. Kind of what your unconscious mind hears, that's what I want. So then you
Mhm.
end up it's kind of like the law of attraction, right? It's like you end up attracting more of that. So if instead you can be like, I'm going to find a secure partner, I'm determined to find these things that show me that this person is secure and this is who I'm going for, then suddenly you find like you end up just opening your mind up to seeing more of that in your realm.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's
And
so
especially, go on.
let's go for it.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, especially what that it's making me think of is with typically people will describe the healthy, secure person as being boring. It's too much. It's all of these things that are undesirable, the ick, those kind of things. And
Yeah.
actually, if you can really train yourself and teach yourself, because this is a huge part of the work that I do with people is, well, what is love? You've been on my podcast. It's one of the reasons I ask people is because I hope that that question of what is love, what does it mean to you, will support people to recognize love isn't so ambiguous, it's not so uncertain, it's not so painful, it's not just because you're checking your phone all the time, that doesn't equal love.
Yeah.
It's really important to redefine what is love.
Yeah.
And sometimes just that obsession with the red flags and the avoidant person and
Yeah.
unavailable, you don't learn that. You just learn what it's not.
Exactly.
You need to learn what it is,
Yeah.
so
And what it is to you.
what it is to you. And I think in general, I think we
Yeah.
can look as well, what is a secure,
Mhm.
healthy kind of green flags. And obviously it's going to vary from person to person. It's not like this checklist,
Mhm.
but it's really important because people with insecure attachment tend to have a very distorted idea of what love is. For me, I remember being told I was loved all the time.
Yeah.
So I had this narrative that I know love. I was very, very loved. The connection I hadn't made is that the behavior side of that love was really, really toxic and unhealthy. And
Right.
so just because I was being told, and I was told then that this is what love is, because I love you and this is how I act. And of course I believed that person that this is what love is.
Uh-huh. Yeah. That's
So there's that element of what is healthy.
mm-hmm. And having the whole like not just someone talking the talk but walking the walk. I see this a lot with I have one of my best friends is currently dating. She's single and she definitely had those old patterns in the past and she's, worked through them. And even in dating right now, what she's really aware of is like other men telling her all these things, exactly what she wants to hear. And like, oh, I've done all this work and I've done this and I've healed this. And then when it comes to actions, they speak a completely different language. And instead of like getting into that trap which she would have fallen in the past of like, oh, I can help this person. Like, let me just like, this the savior kind of thing. Like, oh no, like I can like help them figure it out. Like I can be in there and support them, which comes out of a place of love, like you want to do better. But
Mhm.
then we can't change someone. Like that has to be an internal process. Like it has to come from within.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And something that I didn't appreciate enough, maybe until the relationship that I'm in, is like my partner, he does like self-development and growth, and he naturally has the ability to have those conversations, but it's not something he has actively worked on. He hasn't actively worked to become secure,
Yeah.
because if you have had the right circumstances, you are able to be secure. You don't have to work really hard on it. I'm not saying we don't have to work on ourselves to be better, but to have good communication, positive expectations in love, all of those things, right? To show up and to be there isn't something that everyone has to work on. It's natural for some people,
Yeah.
but I think we can get a little bit like, right, I need someone that's done all the work. It's like,
Yeah.
well, not.
No, exactly. And I think what
You
you said earlier there is really crucial as well. It's like sometimes the secure ones feel boring.
have to retrain that. If you
Yeah.
if you if you are serious about having a long-term healthy relationship, if you're serious about it not being that painful, anxious avoidant, because I'm not saying avoidant people can't make
Hmm.
great partners,
Hmm.
it will obviously depend on the severity and how much other security they have as well.
Mhm.
Um, but if you're really serious about it, healthy relationships, I would say, you've got to stop telling yourself the lie that it's boring. If you
Yeah.
keep telling yourself that story, and they're just not. I can't remember who I was speaking to. I spoke to someone else on a podcast. I don't know if it was you being on mine. I'm not sure. But someone in my membership said about like, oh, all of this, it's going to be boring, being in that relationship. It's just, I don't want to lose the excitement. And I just said, like, what do you imagine relationships to be like? Because
Mhm.
trust me, like, they are still bumpy. They are still full of drama. There's still disagreements. Like, don't worry. If you need that, you're still going to get it with a healthy, secure person because you're still two people
Exactly.
with different ideas. And so it's still, it's not like it's just suddenly this really easy thing, that has absolutely no anxiety in it or no, whatever it is you feel like you need.
Yeah.
Like, good people aren't these perfect people that aren't exciting, that have no,
Absolutely.
whatever it is, or that aren't attractive, or because I think there's this idea, right, that the avoidant, unavailable, they're these attractive, tall, mysterious, I don't know, movie type love that whatever it is, it's just such a shame.
Yeah.
You just got to, there's obviously ways, there's tools and strategies that can help us to change how we think and what we believe, of course. But ultimately, however you go about it, there has to be this decision of stop saying that they're boring.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
And I
also
mean,
really insulting.
yeah, right?
Why
Right?
would is a secure person, what would a secure person say about someone that believes healthy love is boring? They're not going to want that because they probably want a long-term relationship that's not full of drama, like the kind of drama I'm talking about, anxious avoidant. So don't worry about them. Don't worry about, people say, oh, but I don't want to hurt them. So, well, don't worry about it because they want a healthy relationship.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they can deal with you hurting them. People
Yeah.
go on dates knowing that it might not work out because this is another thing you hear, especially from anxious about dating secure, is all they're nice, but I don't want to hurt them. Don't worry about them. If they're secure and nice as you believe, they're going to be fine.
Yeah, exactly. They're going to be able to just overcome
They'll
it.
be fine, but because they don't end up necessarily on the bathroom floor when things don't work out, they pick themselves up and they go again.
Yeah, they use the tools that they have to pick them up because life is a roller coaster after all, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's all about creating your tools. Would you say that there still needs to be a piece of attraction though, right? Like between like the secure. It's not like the person needs to be like, oh, I can just tell they're secure, but I'm so not attracted to them. It's, do you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
no. And again, it's things like this where I think it can be too black and white. Of like,
Yeah.
oh, I heard this on a podcast, so so I just need to accept the ick, or I just need to accept. No, 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 not at all.
Yeah,
You don't have to find someone attractive because they're secure, and just because they're secure, it doesn't mean that this has to work out. Because
exactly.
that's something you hear is, oh, they were secure, so why didn't it work out? So, well, because you're still not each other's people. There's still
Yeah,
all the other things that come into it.
absolutely.
But yeah, there has to be attraction. If you know that my icks are ridiculous, if you know that your icks are just, I don't know, just things that you don't like, but don't have to necessarily equal whether someone could be a great partner to you, and you can't overlook that, and it's happening every time that their hair was out of place, or it's their shoes, or it's these kind of things. If you know that every single time you date someone secure, you are getting these feelings or coming up with these reasons, you need to really look inwards. That's when it's a sign that there's more to this.
Mm,
But if this is someone where it's like there's just no attraction,
yeah.
it could be that there's I one person will always come to my mind with this actually, he was secure. We went on a few dates. and I just couldn't. I remember I knew this is a good person, attractive enough, just couldn't get in there. The person that I ended it for was more unavailable. Just what I think about that now, because had I been in the right place, obviously I'm very, very thankful now that that wasn't in
Hmm.
the right place. Had I been, I can see that that could have been a healthy thing for me.
Yeah, right.
I never looked back and thought, oh, damn, if only I'd been ready, or oh, God, I'm really letting this go. I simply accepted I must not be ready.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with him. Very kind, very nice, attractive. I just couldn't get into it.
Yeah.
And I just took it as you're not there yet.
Uh-huh.
Just not there, which is disappointing, I'm sure. I didn't let myself go there. I'm thinking about the people that are like, do feel that disappointment of like letting that go. Um, I just never let myself go there
Hmm.
because I'm very much, I do believe what's meant for us is meant to be. And I do believe things can work out for us if we keep trying, if we keep going, and all of those things. And obviously now I'm in a position, I'm in the very fortunate position of hindsight and
Hmm.
being in the relationship that I wanted, dreamt of, and all of those things. But when you're not in that space, I appreciate that it's just like, oh, what do you know? You've got this and you've got that. It's like, it's hard, isn't it? When the person's there, it can be hard to hear them.
Yeah.
But yeah, just thankfully it worked out how it all did.
Yeah. It all ends up working out exactly how it's meant to in the long run if we're able to have that faith. It comes back to that belief of like just like it's I'm gonna find it. I'm gonna
Exactly.
find it.
And it's still not easy.
Yeah.
It's still not easy. When I got into this relationship, I really had to go back to doing some of the things that I thought I had worked on. It
Hmm.
brought up things that I didn't know I needed to work on. It still brings up things now, plus just the normal relationship uh, dynamics and annoyances and issues. And that gets confused with, is that my anxiety or is this just a healthy relate? You're
Yeah.
always figuring things out. I am more secure
Hmm.
and I live with an anxious attachment for sure.
Hmm.
But I'm definitely more secure than ever.
Yeah.
But I don't mind saying that I don't know if it will be, but I live with an anxious attachment for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's comes back to just again having these tools to bring ourselves back and recognize like, yeah, in the past I would have maybe been different and I would have gone more into that like, anxious, but now I'm able to deal with it in a different way. But that doesn't mean that the feelings don't still come up. The
Exactly.
thoughts don't come up. It's more the way we deal with it that becomes different.
That's it. But speaking of those tools, one of the biggest things is learning how to regulate those big emotions, learning how to come back into relationship when the reaction is to come out or to have that big reaction towards him, to be able to go inwards, look at my triggers, look at my reactions, understand what's going on, and not have to act. Don't
Yeah.
have to act. That's probably been like some of the biggest things.
Yeah. What would you say are some of your favorite ways to teach people to help regulate their big emotions?
This is where I find like it's such a big question, isn't it? I
Mhm.
think that if I at the moment I'm working on something where it's looking at the basics. So if we were to really look at the basics of emotion regulation, like firstly, just I guess you have to be able to recognize in yourself when you're not able to regulate. And usually the signs of that, right, is that it is so big, it becomes so big that you act out of character, that you know that your reaction is out of proportion to this situation. You might even be saying, I think this is my inner child. You'll have these kind of knowings, and there'll be certain work that you're drawn towards. And I would say we need to be able to name that emotion. Like, really, if we can go in instead of going out. So when you're
Yeah.
triggered, the temptation is to go outwards. What have they done?
Yeah.
they did this, why did they do that, to think about it. If we can go in and be like, okay, firstly, like, what am I reacting to? What am I feeling? What are the thoughts associated with this? And just really take this step back and become the observer of that reaction.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it's going to stop it. I think in the early stages, I always say, can we go 1% better?
Yeah.
Can we do something to just put that gap between us? Just because we feel something, we don't have to act on it.
Mm.
It's so tempting. It gives us this sense of urgency. With insecure attachment, a lot of the time there's this sense of nowness because of the way memories are unprocessed. So it feels like this is happening now and it's about this situation. I think if we can really start to recognize, okay, when it's this big, it's probably something else.
Yeah.
I'm probably experiencing, can I be with that?
Mm-hmm.
Can I be with that with curiosity?
Mm-hmm.
What is it that I'm experiencing?
Mm-hmm.
So I really feel like the naming it and the getting to know the patterns, meeting yourself with curiosity, meeting yourself with compassion is really, really key.
Yeah.
And ultimately, we just really want to be able to put that pause in when we feel big emotion. Other things I think are just getting really, really practical. It is actually okay to have like survival techniques in those moments. I've just got to get through this.
Yeah.
We think we've got to do this deep work so that this can go.
Yeah.
Sometimes we've just got to get through this.
Yeah.
Sometimes I've just got to get through this and not send that
Yeah.
text. Sometimes I've got to get through this and know that tomorrow is going to come. This
Yeah.
is going to pass, but you won't believe it.
Mm-hmm.
When you're in it, it's highly likely you're not going to believe that this is ever going to pass and you're going to feel like yourself again.
Right.
I remember just saying to myself, I will feel like myself again. I don't know when, it's not now. It's
Yeah.
not going to be in the next hour by the feel of it, but there will be a point where I feel like myself again.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Oh, this is really great stuff. So tell us a little bit about you have a really beautiful membership, the Attachment Recovery Gym.
Yeah.
Tell the listeners a little bit about it because I know that that's a really great way for someone who is listening to this podcast episode and they're realizing like, oh my God, there's all these things that I can like recognize in me and I want to change them and I want to work on it and I want to be guided through it. So tell us a little bit about the ways that people can work with you.
Yeah, I think with the attachment recovery gym, it's an interesting one because it attracts people that are in this stage of, oh my gosh, like, I don't want to feel like this anymore. I need to get out of this,
Yeah.
which also isn't the way that I necessarily work. So, do I think that some people come to the membership looking for getting all the answers and how do I get this person back? And how do I get rid of my anxious attachment? I think it does attract those people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, how much they then love the membership, I'm not sure
Yeah.
because they've never said anything. That's just my thought
Yeah.
that might happen. But the majority of the people that come to the membership and who it's actually for is, and don't get me wrong, that person that comes in that state, they may well take something,
Yeah.
but it's very much for those people that are they're recognizing these patterns
Mm-hmm.
and they are in a learning
Mm-hmm.
and taking action stage of healing, so that they do want to consume all of this information,
Yeah.
but they very much want to consume the information about how do I become secure.
Right.
And then not only that, but they want to take action and they're willing to take action. Like, I personally put in the work. I put in the work to become secure, and you really have to be willing to do that. So the exercises in there, the tools in there, the journal prompts in there, the community in there is really important to actually be using that.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe in habits, exercising your secure attachment, not being obsessed with the avoiding unavailable red flags. And the other element is that comes into the gym, the membership. That's why it's called a gym, the exercising, the
I love
secure.
that.
Yeah, because we have that secure self within. We just have
Yeah.
to find it. We
Yeah.
just have to exercise it. But the other element that comes, I kind of try and weave in a lot, is very values based. What are your dreams? What's your future vision? Why are we doing this? Because if you're just doing this for relationship, you might continue in the same pattern. So who are you? Let's really focus on that as well. So that if you do get ghosted next week, you've also got your dream in mind as a cushion.
Yeah. Oh, dreams and goals are so important.
They are.
So important. They really
They,
are what gets us through.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's a huge part of I didn't mention it, but a huge, huge part of my recovery was even just saying, oh my God, I wanted to be a coach for years, way before it was the coaching world is what it is. And I just remember because I realized coming out of that relationship I mentioned, I realized um, I had this niggle that wasn't right for me anyway. So I was like, what other niggles have I got that I can listen to? Oh, I really want to be a coach. I really want to do this. I really want to start a blog. I really want a podcast. I was like, hey, let's follow the niggles.
I love that. I love that. Let's follow the niggles. That's
Yeah.
so interesting. I can't remember if I shared this with you when I was on the podcast with you, but I have always had the niggle to go towards like self-development and helping people. Like I wanted to study psychology, but I was told that only con artists are like psychologists by my parents.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
That
I'm
just shows you like why I ended up in an avoidant. Like
I'm insulted.
so bad. So it's like so fun. Like I remember
I
that
never heard that.
conversation. It's so bad, so bad. I remember being 19 years old, finishing school, wanting to go to university to study psychology, and my mom and my stepdad telling me like, no, you can't make any money with that. Like you can just talk to your friends. You know, psychologists are just con artists. It doesn't even make a difference anyway. And because I was still so young, I kind of took it on. I ended up going to law school. Like
Shall
what?
I? I'll tell you something. I always wanted, or I had a niggle to write for pop magazines, pop
Uh-huh.
culture magazines and stuff. And I remember I guess like talking about that in at home or something. And my mum's partner at the time said, "You could never do that." Yeah, and it really and I actually never went down that road, but what I did do eventually is start a blog.
Good
So
for you.
writing, that idea of writing did come back.
Yeah.
So maybe it was more the niggle to write, I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, he said you'll never be able to do that, and I was like, oh, truth.
Yeah,
And it's
right. It's like you
hard,
do
isn't it?
take that on.
Take it
And it's so
on.
funny for me. And I literally think like, and my parents still don't really fully understand what I do because I think of those beliefs that they told me when I was 19. But yeah, I'm not a psychologist, didn't study psychology, but I'm still helping people, still working with them, like in that coaching
Mhm.
realm, helping them figure out their like unconscious problems. So it's so
Yeah,
interesting to see how it's like a full circle.
isn't it? For both, that's really lovely. And so hopefully, because the membership used to be called Follow Your Fire.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah. It was exactly for this, because this is part of healing and creating secure attachment, right?
Mhm.
Is being the person that you would have been
Mhm.
without this attached insecurity. If I
Yeah.
didn't have that experience, if I didn't have that insecurity, what other things I would have gone for, and the niggles will tell you, and just
Yeah.
move towards them. They'll also move you in the right direction of the new friends,
Yeah.
the job that's meant for you, the person that's meant for you.
Yeah.
Just follow that fire. So if you don't know what direction to go in, just follow that and it will take you to something.
Oh, I love that. I feel like, we've been going on for a while. This is like the perfect thing to end on. Just follow your fire and it's going to take you to where you need to go.
Isn't it?
Oh, so beautiful. Thank you so much, Carley Ann. That was so amazing. I
Thank you.
appreciate you for your time and for your wisdom. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for tuning into the Empower and Evolve podcast today, my dear bestie. If you found this episode inspiring and elevating, I would love for you to consider expressing your support by taking a moment to rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Help me extend the ripple of empowerment by sharing this podcast with those in your circle who may resonate with it. And if this episode has struck a chord within you, I extend a heartfelt invitation to share your experience on Instagram, and make sure to tag me at It's Coach Kat, and let's spread the love together. Until we reunite in the next episode, may your journey be filled with empowerment, evolution, and the unwavering pursuit of your most authentic self. Now go and liberate yourself, and until next time, take care, my dear bestie.